Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of My Favorite Builds. You didn't think this was over, did you? This is probably one of my favorite Amazon characters, and I actually leveled this one all the way to level 9, so that's 99. So that should tell you something, because I didn't get bored of it all the way to level 99, which, well, yeah. And what build is this? Well, it's really simple. It's the Freezing Arrow build. The Freezing Arrow build is an extremely powerful build that utilizes the ability to essentially deal massive amounts of damage across, well, just about as many monsters as you want to. The damage is almost exponential in the way that it acts, and you can oftentimes shatter entire screens of monsters for relatively few arrows. Let me give you an example of how this damage works, and then I'll take you out and I'll actually show you how the character works. So first off, the damage of my current ability is level 40, and I'm at 3,639 to 3,686, right? So let's actually bring up a calculator, and we'll talk about how this damage multiplies out and why it's so ridiculous. So at 3,686, in fact, we can average this. So 3,639, 39 plus 3,686, 3686 equals divided by 2, gives us an average damage per shot of 3,662.5. However, because it also explodes with this same damage, it basically tends to do a lot more than what it states. As you can see here, my freezing arrow on hit is 1,067, whereas my freezing arrow damage of my actual attack, because of the way that this ability works, and it adds in damage from other effects, like for instance, if I have cold damage charms, or if I'm running things like ice that gives me Holy Freeze Aura, any type of cold damage that I have gets added into the equation. So instead of it being just the rated skill damage, it's actually higher than that. So we're actually looking at 4,168. So 3,994 plus 4,168 equals divided by 2, which gives us 4,081. And just for the sake of argument, let's remove that 81 damage, and let's just say that it's 4,000 damage per shot, essentially, right? Now, that's just the explosion. That's not the unhit. The unhit is a separate calculation. Now, 4,000 damage doesn't really seem like a lot. However, it's an explosion. It's a radial explosion. And this radial explosion has a range of 3.3 yards, which means it hits a relatively large number of monsters as long as they're standing close together. Now, when you calculate out the piercing damage, which is 4,000 times a total of 5 pierces with a 6th additional hit at the end, which is the last and final hit, gets you a total of 24,000 damage for 6 pierces. However, if you have a large number of monsters in that radial circle, each one of these explosions can hit all of the monsters within the circle of this radius. So if you, say, had 30 monsters in a nice tight little pack, and you fired this off, pierced 6 times, and hit all 30 monsters with all 6 explosions, you would do 720,000 damage per shot. The other crazy thing about this is that it also freezes the targets as well, which is pretty amazing. Let's go to River Flame real quick, and let me kind of show you how this works. First, we have immune to cold monsters right off the bat, which, through the use of a Sunder Charm, which we don't have on us. I also forgot to grab the ring. Hold on. Let me grab my ring. That gives us our cannot be frozen. And we're missing our Cold Sunder. Where can we snatch a Cold Sunder from real quick? Because this character doesn't work very well without the Cold Sunder. And this is something that changed dramatically when the Cold Sunders were actually released, is that, well, you know, using the Cold Sunder made such a huge difference in the way the characters worked. And if I had to guess, I think Pyrotechnic has a Cold Sunder on her. Let's steal hers just for this video, shall we? Not really that big of a deal. Without the Cold Sunder, we can't break immunities, and without breaking immunities, we're not going to do very much damage now, are we? I actually kind of gutted that character. Would not, to say that I don't like the character, but after playing her for 99 levels, I did want to move on to other characters, and so I ended up using a lot of her equipment on other characters, and so I had to actually go through the process of pulling a lot of her equipment back in for this video. Let's pull one of these charms. The max damage one is fine. There we go. Now we got our Cold Sunder. Back to the River of Flame. Now, there's two things about the Freezing Arrows on that I love the most. First off is the density clear damage. The density clear damage is absolutely insane, and honestly, the ability to clear large packs of monsters with relative ease is kind of nuts. The larger the pack, the more damage you do, and it really just kind of gets into like an exponential phase where you're really just dishing out more and more damage the more and more monsters that you have in that, you know, particular area. If you can get a particularly nice dense pack, you can do even better. Against bosses, she's not the best in the world. I do think that she could probably be better against bosses. In fact, if you're gonna build a character for bossing, this is not it. You can dual spec her though, which is rather interesting. So let's talk about that as well. The Freezing Arrow ability only requires 20 and 40 points. You don't have to build Ice Arrow, so it's a 40-point investment total, which is actually not bad at all. Well, actually, 41, 42... Well, wait, yeah. No, 41. It's a 41-point investment, which is relatively inexpensive, and can be run alongside other builds. Like, for instance, if you wanted to do, say, a Lightning Fury or a Charge Strike build or something like that, you can actually run them together. It's a little bit of a point stretch, but it's doable, which makes the Freezing Arrow Amazon even more amazing in my book. Also, equipment-wise, the Freezing Arrow Amazon isn't really too ridiculously tough to build out. I'm utilizing an Arcane's Valor with a Cold Facet in it, because Arcane's Valor is pretty much the only armor in the game that gives you +2 skills and can also house a Cold Facet. You could potentially utilize, say, like a J-modded 4 Cold Facet armor, or you could go with something else, but I think that the Arcane's Valor is just the best option because it offers me the +2 skills, the faster hit recovery, as well as the ability to throw an additional facet in. And then I'm also utilizing Crown of Ages for the 2 sockets that it offers so that I can put in 2 more cold facets for more negative resistances. You don't necessarily have to have a Crown of Ages. Any 2-socket helmet would honestly work. You could even go with a 3-socket helmet with basically just, you know, just lots of cold facets. Cold facets is really what you're looking for here to get the extra damage out of the ability. But if you're going to dual spec, you might end up going with a slightly different build. Now, for the main bow, there's actually 2 best-in-slot bows for this build. One is the Ice Bow, which is a very effective bow. The Ice Bow wins when you're not fighting cold immunes. It is the highest damage bow for this build, bar none, when you're not fighting cold immunes. However, when you are fighting cold immunes, the best bow is actually Wizen Draw, which has a total of -40% enemy cold resistance if you include a perfect facet. And -40% enemy cold resistance trumps the -20 on this bow significantly, and allows you to bypass the immunities of most cold immune monsters. In fact, a really effective Freezing Arrows on setup would be Wizen Draw on one hand and Ice on the other. I actually utilized Harmony for the ability to get around quickly because Harmony gives you that nice vigor aura, so I could run around as quickly as possible. For boots, I ended up using Silk Weaves because you do have some mana issues with this particular build, and it's nice to have the 5 to mana after each kill. I did originally start with an Insight Merc, specifically because I needed lots and lots of mana, but I eventually fixed that by adding in large amounts of mana leech and mana after each kill, so that I didn't need that anymore. For the amulet, you definitely want a +2 Amazon amulet with a large amount of mana leech, mana, and as well cold resistance to offset the cold rupture. As far as the rings, you definitely need Ravenfrost for the Cannot Be Frozen, as well as the cold damage adds a considerable amount of damage to your explosions, which is very, very nice. And then on top of that, we're using a Mana Leech all res with cold resistance specific ring here. As you can see, my resistances aren't really all that amazing. 2%, 2%, 2%, 21%, right? Well, It doesn't really matter too much on this character, though, because this character has absolutely insane crowd control abilities and can usually lock down most monsters with relative ease in combination with, of course, her evasions, which makes the entire process just that much easier. Now, in general, when it comes to... my phone is currently on that. Messing up my video. Blowing up my phone. You also want some +2 bow and crossbow skill gloves with 20% increased attack speed, and mana leech if you can get your hands on it. You notice a trend here: mana leech, mana leech, mana leech, right? And also mana after each kill. The reason why you want this, as well as plus mana, you want to get your mana pool as high as possible, and you want as much mana leech as possible, so that you can get away from using insight, because insight really kind of holds back the build. And then you can go with a different character. Now I've unfortunately gutted my mercenary here. He was probably using a Plague Phase Blade, that would be my guess. And he was probably using Crescent Moon in the other hand for the static field procs, which was very helpful. And then you can see he has a very nice duress armor here. The reason why is because I really like the Plague Cleansing Aura. It's absolutely amazing for survivability reasons. Far better, honestly, than Meditation is. When it comes to prayer, because the ability to remove all curses and all poisons from you and your mercenaries is just insane by comparison. My only regret about this character is that she's just really not good single target. I really wish that they had enabled some way for this character to become better single target damage. Although Freezing Arrow is absolutely amazing at density clear, it's absolutely amazing at killing large packs, even immune to cold monsters. It's just not very good at killing a single target with large amounts of HP, which you would think that Cold Arrow and Ice Arrow would, solve that problem, but neither one of these is very good at single target either, surprisingly. You can, however, like I said, build a hybrid, like Charge Strike build just for the fun of it, so you can have your single target cake and your crowd control cake and eat it too. But Freezing Arrow cannot be understated as one of the most ridiculous crowd control and density clear abilities within the game. Its sheer ability to just absolutely annihilate entire packs of monsters with relative ease is kind of insane. In P1, of course, she has absolutely no problem with just about anything. Even in P8, because of her ability to freeze targets, even when she's in danger, she's not really in danger. I gotta check these boots. We must check the boots. Check the boots. On top of this, she also has the ability to save her allies. So this is something that I've played around with on the Freezing Arrows on, and it's so ridiculously fun to save your friends. You could be running along in a particular zone, like Worldstone Keep, or maybe you're running along in Catacombs or something, and your friend could be like, "Oh my God, there's also XX, ridiculous monster over here, and I can't kill him, and he's ripping me to shreds." You can literally go up and you can just freeze entire packs of monsters and save their life, which I've done so many times on this particular character. The sheer capability of this character to lock down enemies, to completely and utterly make the battlefield just seem, I don't really know how to put it other than just impotent. There's nothing pretty much on the battlefield that really even causes this character much trouble. When it comes to the regular game, not Uber Tristram or Uber Diablo, but when it comes to the regular game, she just breezes through everything. I've honestly had absolutely no trouble with this character whatsoever on just about any content. Even Ghoul Lords, which regenerate life, no problem whatsoever, because you can freeze them. Here's a big old pack of beetles, look. Oh, I'm so scared of the beetums. I mean, no, I'm actually not scared of the beetums because they're all dead. As for skill points, let's go over that real quick. So it's 20 in Cold Arrow, 20 in Freezing Arrow. And you do not have to put points in Ice Arrow if you don't want to. But I did for this particular build because I really enjoyed the high amounts of freezing ability that Ice Arrow gives you. So Ice Arrow only gives you freeze length, and you don't necessarily have to put points into Ice Arrow. It's not necessary. But you can if you want to enhance the freeze length of Freezing Arrow. So if you go full into Freezing Arrow, it's 60 points. If you only go for the damage, it's only 40 points. I usually end up grabbing Guided Arrow anyway, just simply because Guided Arrow is absolutely an amazing one for just, guaranteed hits on monsters that might be a little bit difficult to kill. I think 1 point wonders here is the term. You want 1 point in critical strike. You don't need anything more than that. 1 point in penetrate. You don't need anything more than that. As for piercing, you're going to put 18 points into piercing. I know you can't see it because it's behind my chair. The reason why you want 18 points of piercing is because, well, you're not going to use a razor tail. You're not going to use a wisdom, so you're going to need that additional piercing to make sure that you're hitting your targets. Piercing is where the majority of the damage for this character comes from, because your Freezing Arrow pierces through and dishes out more damage for the number of monsters that it pierces, and you want it to always reach that 6th pierce, or that 6th hit, which is where your money damage comes from. You're basically multiplying your explosions by 6, and then those explosions are multiplying your damage by a rather massive degree. And so you end up with a very, very high damage character. So piercing, which is down here at the bottom, piercing does require a really large amount of points to get the investment that you want, which is 18 points at a 91% chance. Dodge, I put 5 points into. Avoid, I put 5 points into. And Evade, I put 5 points into. As well as Inner Sight is 1. Slow Missiles is 1, Decoy is 1, and Valkyrie is 8 to get it to that magic level 17, which level 17 is the point where she gets the good weapon and she becomes her more powerful self. I definitely recommend that if you intend to use a Valkyrie, you get her at least to level 17. That's the magic level where she becomes her most powerful version of herself. Of course, she can become more powerful than that, but that's her last great weapon upgrade, which is honestly how she gets the majority of her damage. And then, of course, the Javelin Tree, you pretty much spend nothing. As for her stat points, I have a base of 132 Strength, a base of 142 Dexterity, and a base of 296 Vitality, as well as 15 base Energy. Overall, this character has definitely been an absolutely fun character. And as far as charms go, you do need to get bow and crossbow skillers, preferably with either life or cold damage, which will also enhance your damage. Cold damage, bow and crossbow skills are mint here because the 4 and 11 damage gets multiplied by all your other effects, which is pretty massive. You also want to get as many of these crazy cold damage charms as you can. 10 to 15 like Hibernals, 9 to 20 Hibernals, 10 to 19 Hibernal small charms of life, and so forth and so on. You want as many of these as you can because each one of these is going to add a huge amount of damage to your explosion. And that explosion is going to multiply it. So you have to remember that it might only seem like 20 cold damage, right? But 20 cold damage is being multiplied 6 times, right? So you got 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, right? And then that 120 is again being multiplied by the number of monsters that you're hitting. So if you're hitting 10 monsters, that's 1,200. If you're hitting 100 monsters, that's 10,200, and so forth and so on. So a small amount of damage like this, you have to remember when it comes to Freezing Arrow, gets multiplied out tremendously in the number of monsters that you're hitting. And that's why when you see me running through these dungeons and I'm, for instance, in Hell difficulty and I'm fighting like a large pack of monsters and I fire my Freezing Arrow in, you see the Freezing Arrow just like absolutely annihilate the monsters from existence. The less monsters there are, the slower they die. The more monsters there are, the faster they die. And if there's enough monsters there, I can fire just one arrow and the entire screen pops. Now, those ghouls are immune to cold, and I'm still able to pretty much just destroy them. As you can see here, absolutely no problem. Even when you're cornered on this particular character, which is absolutely insane. Even when you're cornered, even when your monsters have you, like stuck somewhere, you can still get out. Because most of the time you can freeze them all until help arrives, or until you kill them. There's been many times, even on Players 8, where I've taken this character into, some particularly nasty zones, and it doesn't matter, because I can just freeze the monsters until they're dead. Here we go. We've got an elite cold immune monster. And he's dead. Another interesting trick that you can use for this particular character is hitting walls. So when you shoot a monster, a cold explosion happens, right? So when it hits a monster, you get a cold explosion. When it hits a wall, you also get a cold explosion. So if you line up a monster near a wall, you can actually get 2 cold explosions by, like, for instance, this guy right here. I can hit him. He gets 1 cold explosion. It pierces through him, then hits the wall, and you get a 2nd cold explosion. This means that you can get double damage with this particular ability as long as you line things up right. There's tons of different things that you can use with this mechanic, by the way. You don't necessarily just have to be walls. It can also be pillars. It can be like a particular tree or a chest, or there's a lot of different things that you can reflect the damage off of. It just depends on, like what. You just kind of have to play around with stuff. Like, for instance, that tree works. This cactus works right here. And when you're fighting a particularly tough monster in a single target, it helps to kind of line them up near a wall or near a pillar or near a tree or something like that, so that you can get that additional damage bonus out of them. All in all, I think this character is an absolutely mad powerhouse and super fun to play. Super fun, just a character just to have fun with and just play. You can also add in a pretty decent amount of magic find if you want to by using Geeds, dialing back a little bit of your damage output. And let me also talk a second about this ridiculousness on ice. Now, when I first built this character ages ago, I did not really pay attention to the based on character level extra gold for monsters, but Ice has an insane level of extra gold for monsters. At level 99, it is 309% extra gold for monsters. In combination with something like Gold Wrap that has a pretty decent amount of extra gold for monsters like, Chanseys and a couple other items as well as Geeds, you can easily get your extra gold for monsters to a ridiculous level. And speaking of which, I never ran out of gold on this character. I swear my character was always full on gold all the time because of this stupid 309% extra gold for monsters. It's just insane. It's absolutely insane. And then on top of that, once you get your ice, you also have the Holy Freeze aura surrounding you as well, which just adds even more ridiculousness to your crowd control effects. So not only are you able to freeze everything, and not only are you able to chill everything, but now you're also emanating an aura of chilliness. Now you're also emanating a slows target by, which is now affecting everyone. As for the belt, I'm pretty sure I wasn't using Gold Wrap. I was probably using Arachnid Mesh. That would be my guess for that belt slot. I'm pretty sure it was Arachnid Mesh. If I go back to some of my streams where I was leveling up this character, the +1 skills is absolutely beneficial for this character, because the more plus the skills you have, the more freezing arrow damage you have. And the more freezing arrow damage you have, the more cold damage you have, and so forth and so on. And it actually works out quite well. I definitely recommend the Harmony Swap, though, so that you can run around faster in between your shots. It'll take a little practice to get used to, but obviously you can tell which bow you're using by the aura under your feet, so it's not like some of the other swap 2s where you can get confused. You obviously see the Holy Freeze aura under your feet, and then you can switch to the Vigor aura, so you can run around faster. And speaking of running around faster, your teammates will thank you as well. This is a very, very good team build, speaking of which. And earlier I talked about being able to save your teammates. Well, Holy Freeze is absolutely amazing in a group. It's very helpful to a lot of characters. Being able to freeze all the targets, huge amounts of crowd control, is very good for this character. Like, the character's crowd control abilities are amazing. On top of that, you also have your Harmony swap too with the Vigor aura, and people absolutely love it when you swap to your Vigor aura in between fights to get everybody moving faster. All in all, just an absolutely great character to have in groups with other players. And I think that if you give it a try, you'll absolutely love it. You are going to need a pocket smiter pally for those Uber runs. But other than that, I think that the Freezing Arrow Amazon is definitely one of my favorite builds within Diablo 2. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals following me for these fun little videos. And if you do enjoy my content, be sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button, and share my content with other people. And as always, keep watching.